Absolutely. And that there's a certain stepladder that you have to go through before you get to elite sports. So it starts really in high school. And correctly, it was doubles. I always felt I was a better doubles player than a singles player.
You're pretty good at singles.
She lost 1-6, 4-6, gone in the first round. The scoreboard at the Stuttgart Open 2026 said Alex Eala was finished. But the crowd said something completely different. Sessions built around her presence sold out. Filipino fans poured into Germany from across Europe. A woman 7 months pregnant made a 4-hour drive to Stuttgart just to watch her play. The ticket demand didn't care about rankings. It didn't care about results. It overpowered everything the sport uses to measure importance. Martina Navratilova, Stuttgart champion, 18-time Grand Slam winner, someone who has never been lost for words on a tennis broadcast, was visibly, publicly shocked. She had already raised this alarm in January after the Australian Open left fans standing in corridors outside an overflowing Court 6. She demanded on live television that organizers stop underestimating where Eala belongs.
100%. I think sports has always been on the front of social change and social progress.
The same frenzy that floored Navratilova in Melbourne arrived in Germany, louder, further from home, and completely beyond what any WTA 500 had prepared for. The result on the scoreboard is almost irrelevant now. What happened around that match is the story. Subscribe immediately, because what this video uncovers goes so much deeper than 1 week in Germany. Let's start with what actually happened in Stuttgart this week, because the surface-level story is already extraordinary, but the deeper context is what makes it genuinely historic. Alex Eala entered the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix as a late replacement. Qinwen Zheng, the Paris Olympic gold medalist, withdrew with an injury. Tournament organizers slotted Eala in. Simple administrative decision, routine procedure. Except nothing about what followed was routine. The moment her name appeared in the main draw, something activated across Europe's Filipino diaspora that no tennis algorithm had ever accounted for. Flights got booked, drives got planned. That 7 months pregnant woman making a 4-hour journey wasn't an outlier. She was representative of a movement that has been building since Eala dismantled 3 former Grand Slam champions at the 2025 Miami Open and introduced herself to the tennis world in the most violent way possible. This is important context. 12 months ago, Alex Eala was competing on the WTA Challenger Tour. She was outside the top 100. She was a prospect with a promising junior resume, first Filipino to win a junior Grand Slam at the 2022 US Open, trained at Nadal's Academy in Mallorca since age 13, but she was not yet a force the WTA's biggest stages had to plan around. Then Miami 2025 happened. She beat Swiatek, she beat Keys, she beat Ostapenko, all in straight sets. The Philippine flag became a fixture in stadiums across 3 continents. By the time the 2026 season opened in Auckland, fans were already showing up in numbers that confused tournament staff, who had no historical reference point for a player of her ranking generating that volume of attendance. The Australian Open in January was the first true collision between Eala's growing pull and a tournament infrastructure that hadn't adjusted for it. She was assigned Court 6 for her first-round match against Alicia Parks. Court 6, a smaller venue inside Melbourne Park.
20-year-old Filipino tennis star Alex Eala has sent Melbourne Park crowds into an absolute frenzy.
What happened next is where Martina Navratilova enters this story directly. The corridors outside that court filled before the match began. Fans who couldn't get inside stood in lines that stretched visibly through the tournament grounds. The atmosphere inside was described by multiple journalists as more consistent with a quarterfinal at a major than a first-round match on a secondary court. Eala lost that match 0-6, 3-6, 2-6 to Parks. The result barely registered in the noise surrounding her. Her post-match press conference livestream drew over 100,000 views, more than Novak Djokovic's pre-tournament conference, more than 6 times the viewership of Carlos Alcaraz's equivalent session. World number 1, Aryna Sabalenka's pre-tournament conference pulled 9,000 views. Eala's pulled 196,000. Navratilova was in the Tennis Channel studio watching all of this unfold alongside Lindsay Davenport. What she said publicly was direct and pointed. She called it a scheduling mistake. She told the tennis world that organizers needed to account for where players come from and what fan base is physically present at each tournament. There's a massive Filipino audience in Melbourne, in Australia, she said. Keep that in mind next time you make the schedule. Davenport went further, stating outright that Eala should have been placed on a bigger show court. These are not minor voices making polite suggestions. Navratilova and Davenport are two of the most respected analytical figures the sport has. When they sit on a broadcast and publicly criticize scheduling decisions in real time, tournament directors pay attention. The question worth asking is why the problem kept recurring after Melbourne. Dubai came next. Eala reached the quarterfinal and sold out every session she participated in. Indian Wells followed. Filipino fans made 2-hour drives from Los Angeles. One fan described it as the most Filipinos he had ever seen at that tournament in his life. The BNP Paribas Open posted a day-in-the-life video featuring Eala on a Thursday that became the most watched content the tournament had produced all year within hours of going live. Her Instagram following crossed 1 million, placing her ahead of highly ranked players like Jessica Pegula, Madison Keys, and Amanda Anisimova in terms of social reach. Jessica Pegula, the world number 5, described playing Eala in Miami as a genuinely disorienting experience. The whole crowd was against me, Pegula said. I was like, what on earth is going on? Where did these people come from? That question, where did these people come from, is the one the tennis establishment keeps asking and keeps failing to answer adequately. The answer is not complicated. More than 10 million Filipinos live outside the Philippines. Approximately 1.7 million reside in California alone. Significant Filipino communities exist across Australia, the Middle East, and Europe. These are not casual sports tourists. These are people who have waited a long time for a player who looks like them, comes from where they come from, and is genuinely competing at the highest level of a global sport. Eala is the first Filipino player to crack the top 100 in WTA history.
Does really well, and I think there's a lot of things that make her opponents feel very uncomfortable.
The first to win a Grand Slam match in the Open era. The first to reach a WTA final representing the Philippines. Every milestone she reaches lands with a weight that extends far beyond tennis statistics, and her fan base responds accordingly. Back to Stuttgart. The Porsche Tennis Grand Prix has been running since 1978. Its history includes champions of the caliber of Navratilova, Martina Hingis, Maria Sharapova, Steffi Graf, and Angelique Kerber. It is a tournament with genuine prestige and a sophisticated European audience. It was not a venue that had ever needed to think about Filipino diaspora travel patterns when planning its operational logistics. This April, it did. The ticket demand around Eala's first-round match against Leylah Fernandez, itself a fascinating subplot given Fernandez's Filipino-Canadian heritage through her mother, generated crowd energy that multiple reporters on the ground described as an atmosphere more consistent with a late-round match involving a top seed. Both players are left-handed. Both carry Filipino connections. The crowd was present for both, but the noise was unmistakably centered on Eala. The match itself went to Fernandez, 6-1, 6-4. Fernandez was the sharper player. She went up 5-0 in the opening set and controlled the tempo throughout. Eala showed resistance in the second set, breaking back to close within 4-5, but couldn't complete the turnaround. It was a difficult afternoon on clay for a player who has now suffered first or second-round exits in her last several clay appearances, including the loss to Ostapenko in Linz the week before, where she blew a 5-1 lead in the second set. The clay swing is clearly a work in progress. The French Open looms in late May, followed by Madrid and Rome before that. There is a real technical adjustment required, but here is what the clay results do not touch. Eala entered Stuttgart ranked 45th in the world with a 2026 season record of 14 wins and 8 losses. Her best run of the year was a semi-final at the ASB Classic in Auckland. She reached the quarterfinals in Dubai and at the Philippine Women's Open. She pushed deep at Indian Wells before losing to Muchova. These are not the numbers of a player who has broken through yet at the very top tier. They are the numbers of a player in the middle of a legitimate climb. Yet the infrastructure response she is forcing, bigger courts, revised scheduling, operational rethinking at the tournament level, is more consistent with what a top 5 player generates. That gap between her ranking and her cultural footprint is the defining tension in her story right now, and it is a tension that is getting wider, not narrower, as 2026 progresses. Navratilova's shock was never really about one moment at one tournament.
100%. I think sports has always been on the front of social change and social progress.
It was the reaction of someone who understands tennis history deeply enough to recognize when something is happening outside the normal parameters of how the sport grows its stars. Tennis has had popular players before. It has had players who drew passionate national followings. But the scale, the geographic spread, and the intensity of the support surrounding a 20-year-old in her first full WTA season, still without a title, still working out her clay game, still navigating the mental demands of carrying an entire country's sporting hopes, is without a clean historical parallel in the women's game. Navratilova said what she saw. Stuttgart confirmed it was not an Australian anomaly. It was a pattern. It is permanent. Alex Eala heads to Madrid next, where the Mutua Madrid Open begins April 21st. Another clay court, another field stacked with the sport's best. Another city that will find out, perhaps for the first time, exactly what ticket demand looks like when a Filipino diaspora community decides that showing up is not optional. The scoreboard in Stuttgart said she lost. Everything else, she won something the scoreboard was never designed to measure. If this breakdown gave you a perspective you haven't heard anywhere else, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the notification bell. Because Madrid is next, Roland Garros is coming, and the Alex Eala story in 2026 is nowhere near its most dramatic chapter yet. You do not want to be catching up on this one late.